roll.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioner Alvarado.
Yes.
Commissioner Burke.
Here.
Commissioner Davis.
Here.
Commissioner Eager.
Here.
Commissioner Gardena. Commissioner Inman.
Here.
Commissioner Kehoe. Commissioner Kehoe.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Thank you. Commissioner Liu.
Here.
Commissioner Tavaloni. Vice Chair Norton.
Present.
Commissioner Tavaloni, did I hear you? Senator Bell. Assemblymember Frazier. Vice Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Welcome to the August 2020 CTC virtual meeting. I'd like to start off by thanking former Commissioner Lucy Dunn for her service to the state on this commission. Her energy and passion will be missed, and we'll have more to say on this later. Although she is not able to attend this meeting to hear any comments, we are going to have an I Love Lucy event in the future when she can be present with all of us, that we can congratulate her for her work with the state since she was HCD director in 2004 and a CTC commissioner since 2008. Please note that because this is a two-day meeting, you will need to use a separate link to attend tomorrow's meeting. The link can be found on the first page of the meeting agenda on our website. Please contact CTC staff at the website ctc@catc.ca.gov or use the questions tab if you have questions about this. A few notes. The CTC exists to make transportation planning, funding, and policy more understandable and accountable. Our meetings normally take place in diverse locations around the state so that commissioners can see firsthand the variety of infrastructure issues around California. However, containment measures surrounding COVID-19 have required us to adjust to a webinar format. Please bear with us should we encounter any technical challenges. The Commission's meeting agenda is located under the Handouts tab and can be downloaded and saved during the webinar. It can also be found on the Commission's website. A webinar instructional guide is also located under the Handouts tab and on the Commission's website. If you are experiencing any technical issues with the GoToWebinar system, please contact the Commission staff through the Questions tab or via the CTC email address. A few notes to Commissioners. Should Commissioners have any questions or comments during the meeting, please let staff know through the Comment tab or via text to Mitch and wait for me to call on you. You can also send inquiries and comments through the Questions tab that can be read to presenters and the audience on your behalf. Please mute your microphone except when you intend to speak to minimize outside noise and feedback. I will do my best to call on each of you in turn. Because this meeting is not an in-person meeting, every vote will need to be a roll call vote. Staff will group items for votes to help save time. A commissioner should only speak when called upon for clarity. And when called upon, please state your name and briefly make your point. I would also please ask that no one speak a second time on any one motion until everyone who wishes to speak a first time has done so. For presenters, if you are on the agenda to make a presentation, please do your best to be succinct, as we have lots to get through in these next 2 days. For the public, we welcome comments from the public. For participants joining us through the GoToWebinar system, please find the webinar panel located on the right-hand side of your screen. There you will find the audio, question, and handout tabs. Under the audio tab, attendees will have the choice to listen in via the computer or telephone option. Should you prefer computer audio, please ensure the appropriate box is selected. If you choose the phone call option, select the corresponding box and dial the phone number, access code, and audio PIN as directed by the automated system. Please note that if the audio PIN is not entered, you will remain in listen-only mode and will be unable to speak to the Commission should you have a comment. As a reminder, each registered attendee is provided a unique link and phone number to access the webinar. These cannot be shared with other participants as they are registered to a specific attendee. There are 2 options for participants to provide comments on agenda items. Using the Questions tab, type the agenda item number you are commenting on and your comment. Commission staff will read the comment on your behalf. Alternately, you may click on the hand icon to indicate you wish to make a comment. You will then be unmuted and called upon to make your comment. Please be sure to state your name and affiliation prior to voicing your remarks. Please do your best to be concise with your comments. And also, please make sure that your comments add new information. If you agree with the comments of a previous speaker, simply make the statement that you agree. Since we often have many speakers, we ask that you make your point in 3 minutes or less. If for some reason we have many speakers on a topic, I will need to reserve the right to limit comments potentially to 1 minute. Thank you very much, and we look forward to a wonderful 2 days of meetings. With that, we'll go to item 3. Douglas? That's the approval of the minutes for June 24th, 2020. Is there a motion to approve?
Yes, this is Commissioner Alvarado. I'd like the motion to approve.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
Is there a second? Thank you, Commissioner Burke.
Second.
That's great. Douglas, could you please read the roll?
Commissioner Alvarado,
Yes.
Commissioner Burke,
Aye.
Commissioner Davis, Commissioner Davis,
Yes.
thank you. Commissioner Eager,
Aye.
Commissioner Gardena, Commissioner Inman,
Aye.
Commissioner Kehoe,
Aye.
Commissioner Liu,
Aye.
Commissioner Tavoloni, Vice Chair Norton,
Present. Aye.
Vice Chair, the motion is approved.
Thank you so much. And now we're on to item 4, the commissioner meetings for compensation. Is there a motion to approve?
This is Commissioner Davis, and I'd make that motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. Is there a second?
Commissioner Eager, seconds.
Thank you very much. Douglas, will you please read the roll?
Commissioner Alvarado,
Yes.
Commissioner Burke, Commissioner Davis,
Yes.
Commissioner Eager,
Aye.
Commissioner Gardena, Commissioner Inman,
Aye.
Commissioner Kehoe,
Aye.
Commissioner Liu,
Aye.
Commissioner Tavoloni, Vice Chair Norton,
Aye.
Vice Chair, the motion is approved.
Thank you very much. With that, we're going to move around in this agenda. And so our next item we're going to take up is item 10, and that's the Regional Agencies Moderator, Ivan Garcia. We're getting your microphone on. Mr. Garcia? Can you unmute? Yes. You ready? Okay. We'll have to move to number 11, Rural Counties Task Force, while we look for unmuting for Ivan Garcia. Are you ready now? Mr. Garcia, Ivan Garcia? Okay, while we fix the audience audio problems, let's go to the Rural Counties Task Force, and that's Woodrow Deloria. Oh, I'm sorry.
Hello,
Amber Collins.
Commissioner. Yes, can you hear me?
Thank you so much. Sorry, Amber. Thank you very much for moving forward.
Yes, not a problem. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, please.
Okay. Good afternoon, Commissioners, Chair, staff and others. This is Amber Collins, the Vice Chair of the Rural Counties Task Force and Executive Director of the Calaveras Council of Governments. I'm filling in for Woodrow Deloria, our chair today, who couldn't make it. The Rural Counties Task Force recently met virtually on July 17th to discuss a number of issues and opportunities facing our 26 rural counties. Many of the rural counties, as you're aware, are working with Caltrans regarding the implementation of SB 743, and we appreciate their willingness to consider the challenges and constraints specific to rural counties. As with many of you, we have also been tracking implementation of the governor's climate change executive order in 1919. We received a presentation by CalSTA staff on the executive order to discuss and review the draft transportation action plan, which laid out a number of investment strategies. Based on this presentation, Rural Counties Task Force members requested a standalone meeting to discuss our concerns with the strategies, which we then held on August 3rd. And we appreciate Darwin Musavi and other state agency staff time to go over these concerns. The Rural Counties Task Force also followed up and submitted a letter to CalSTA staff on August 7th outlining some of these concerns. As the direct partners with local delivery agencies, we look forward to continue working with CalSTA to develop the strategies and action plan to best implement the objectives in a way which both helps the state meet their climate goals while investing in rural transportation needs that improve the health, safety, wellness, and prosperity of our rural communities. We would also like to request that your commission receive a presentation on the draft action plan and strategies to ensure that the rural partners can be part of a broader statewide discussion on this important issue and the subsequent actions that will follow. On behalf of all the 26 rural counties,
To give commission members the special line?
Yeah.
Okay. You might want to.
They have.
I also wanted to acknowledge the CTC staff who have always been supportive to our members and recently have gone above and beyond to respond to our questions and concerns. Their willingness to work with our staff directly has really been made clear throughout this incredibly disruptive time. So thank you to all the CTC staff and leadership. That concludes my report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Collins. Are there any questions from our commissioners in this report? None. Thank you so much for your testimony, and we look forward to working with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If we can go back to item 10, Yvonne Garcia, with Regional Agencies Moderator, have we been able to address your audio issues? Okay. Okay.
Hello, Commissioner Norton. This is Dawn Batiste from the San Diego Association of Governments. I am the current vice moderator for the RTPA working group. And I apologize that Mr. Garcia is having some audio difficulties. He is our current RTPA moderator for the year, and as I mentioned, I am the current vice moderator, and we first would like to thank Philip Chu, our outgoing moderator, for everything that he did for us this past year. For this particular report, we also would like to thank CalSTA for having the first statewide RTPA meeting and workshop on July 31st regarding the Transportation Action Plan and the executive order. And Darwin Musavi was kind enough to meet with our RTPA group at a statewide virtual meeting. So listening to the various comments from agencies, the common denominator is really a request for increased communication and engagement with the regions. We are the troops on the ground who are responsible for ensuring successful project delivery, and we are all advocates in working toward protecting and enhancing the environment. So there obviously are no questions with that. But a comment was made that transportation is a piece of the puzzle in combating climate change. That is absolutely right, it's a piece. The statewide RTPAs would like to see the entire puzzle and hear from other sectors that play a role in the effort. and would advocate for a presentation at the October CTC meeting ahead of the joint CTC CARB and HCD meeting in November. There is somewhat a feeling the process is moving fast with the executive order coming out pre-COVID, and the statewide RTPAs have not communicated an urgency at this time. There is some consensus that increased engagement is wanted. We all do support clean air. We support greenhouse gas reductions, both large and small regions. But one thing is very clear, one size does not fit all. And so we don't have a single consensus opinion to provide at this time, but we would like to advocate for common sense solutions, goals and strategies where other states can follow California's lead. And that is where we can collectively make the difference. And that concludes our remarks.
Thank you very, very much. Are there any questions from the CTC commissioners on this presentation? Have there been any requests for public comment on this item? No, thank you. Well, with that, thank you very much. And we appreciate your report.
Thank you.
With that, I wanted to recognize that Senator Bell has joined us, as well as Commissioner Carl Gardena. And with that, I think we will take up item 2. And that's the election of commission chair and vice chair. So with that, is there anyone who'd like to make a motion regarding the commission chair?
This is Commissioner Alvarado. I'd like to nominate Hillary Norton for commission chair.
This is Fran Inman. I would like to second that.
With that motion being made, Douglas, would you call the roll?
Commissioner Alvarado,
Yes.
Commissioner Burke,
Aye.
Commissioner Davis,
Yes.
Commissioner Eager,
Aye.
Commissioner Gardena. I think we're still having audio issues with Commissioner Gardena. Commissioner Inman,
Aye.
Commissioner Kehoe,
Aye.
Commissioner Liu,
Aye.
Commissioner Tavoloni, Vice Chair Norton.
Aye.
Vice Chair, the motion is approved.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, commissioners. With that, we'd like to take up nominations for vice chair. Is there a motion for vice chair?
Not hearing from Commissioner, I would like to nominate Commissioner Alvarado.
And I'd like to second that nomination. Douglas, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Alvarado,
Yes.
Commissioner Burke,
Aye.
Commissioner Davis,
Yes.
Commissioner Eager,
Aye.
Commissioner Gardena, Commissioner Inman,
Aye.
Commissioner Kehoe,
Aye.
Commissioner Liu,
Aye.
Commissioner Tavoloni, Vice Chair Norton.
Aye.
Vice Chair, the motion is approved.
Thank you,
Wonderful.
everybody.
Thank you very much. And we appreciate and congratulations to Vice Chair Alvarado. With that, we'd like to move to number 5, the Commission Executive Director Report. Executive Director Rich Weiss.
Thank you, Chair Norton. First, Commissioners, as you know, July 17th at a joint meeting was the last commission meeting for Commissioner Dunn, as her term has expired. I wanted to take a moment to thank her publicly for her service on the commission and the invaluable expertise she brought, not only with respect to transportation, but also housing policy. Commissioner Dunn, you will be missed. I also want to report to you that I recently had the opportunity to participate in several policy forums, one hosted by the Los Angeles Chamber of Commerce and one by the California Transportation Foundation. Clearly, there is a concern around the state about transportation funding and project delivery in the area of COVID-19, as well as concerns about the future of transit. I think it's important that the state, along with our local partners, keep emphasizing that we need federal help to address these challenges. While we have been fortunate to have experienced only a few impacts to projects to date, the nearly $2 billion state revenue loss forecast by the Caltrans will ultimately mean fewer projects. And we've heard recently, our local partners are experiencing even greater impacts to their revenues, which could even sooner affect their ability to put up their share of funds on projects that are allocated by the Commission. Only the federal government has the resources to backfill state and local governments and transit agencies for the revenues lost due to the pandemic. Of course, our thoughts first and foremost are for the victims of the pandemic, as well as the first responders, healthcare workers, and those who are unemployed due to the pandemic. But the federal government must also recognize that transportation funding plays a critical role in economic recovery. For transit agencies to ensure essential workers can get to their jobs, for critical freight projects to ensure that essential goods are moved efficiently to their destinations, and for construction workers to remain employed and support their families. I know CalSTA and others in the administration have been engaged in conversations with Washington, but the more voices that say this, the more likely we'll be heard. It's disappointing, to say the least, that Congress has not been able to enact another fiscal relief stimulus measure. Now, before turning to some meeting schedule and staffing updates, I wanted to take a moment to let the Commission know that staff has been moving forward on our commitment to equity, as we discussed at our last meeting, and we have an informational item on the agenda to update you later. Updated meeting schedules for 2020 and 2021 have been posted on our website. There are two changes I'd like to note. First, due to the ongoing impacts of the global pandemic, the town hall meeting scheduled for September 2nd and 3rd in Lake Tahoe has been postponed until 2021. Despite this postponement, I want you to know that Commission staff continue to engage with our partners in rural agencies, including regular virtual meetings with the Rural Counties Task Force. We felt, however, that we could not hold an adequate town hall virtually because commissioners would not be able to do project tours and have informal conversations with community members. So, in consultation with the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency, we decided postponement was the best option. The second change is that there will be a road charge technical advisory committee meeting on Friday, September 4th via webinar. I know the pandemic and the resulting recession, road charge has not been at the forefront of most people's minds in terms of transportation issues. But we all know the long-term funding challenges that we face with gas tax revenues. Therefore, it's important we keep moving forward on this issue. I encourage everybody to listen in. I also have several staffing changes to announce. First, Garth Hopkins has announced he will retire in mid-September after a career spanning 32 years in state service. Garth joined the Commission as Deputy Director for Transportation Planning in 2015. During Garth's tenure, he led several important statewide planning policy efforts, including the 2017 Regional Transportation Plan Guide updates and the development of the first ever California Transportation Plan Guidelines. Garth has also served as the Acting Chief Deputy Director on several occasions and has always been regarded as a trusted transportation planning and environmental policy advisor to the Commission and partner agencies. Garth is known for his collaborative nature, his honesty and sense of humor, as well as his mentoring of his staff. We will miss him very much and wish him luck in his much-deserved retirement. Additionally, we have 4 new staff on board since the last Commission meeting. Casey Ruggiero will be managing rail programs as well as working on the STIP. Casey comes to the Commission from Caltrans, where her experience includes serving in the Division of Budgets as the branch chief over capital outlay and local assistance. Her educational background is in accounting. Sheila Ennis has joined the engineering team as an analyst. Sheila comes to us from Caltrans Project Management in Marysville District Office. James Anderson has joined the engineering team also on loan from Caltrans. Thank you, Director Omashakin. James comes to us with more than 28 years of experience He has held leadership roles in roadway and bridge design, contract management, project management, local assistance, and traffic operations. Finally, Leah Shepard has joined us as a retired annuitant who will be helping the programming team with the new programming cycle. Leah is an engineer who worked with Caltrans for over 32 years, including 17 years in the Division of Programming. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mitch. Appreciate getting unmuted. Sorry about that. Next, I'd like to provide my report and remarks. And first, to my commission colleagues, I want to thank you for support for my chairwomanship. It's an honor to serve with you as we collectively rebuild and restore our mobility networks and infrastructure, restore our economy, restore our environment, and enhance our goals for racial and mobility equity. This year, many Californians and CTC commissioners too have experienced loss of loved ones to COVID-19, the pain of watching people suffer with COVID-19, job losses, and the pain of racial injustice and racial violence. Let us speak to each other and work together in these meetings, understanding that we have been through this pain and are working together through the collective issues that need to happen for our recovery. I'm pleased that we are embarking on a series of community listening sessions and an equity advisory roundtable so that we can rebuild and really listen to each other as to what the impacts have been under COVID-19 and under our economic challenges. Collectively, we look forward to working on a new California in partnership with Governor Newsom, the state legislature, CalSTA, Caltrans, HCD, and CARB to make life better for all Californians by stimulating the economy through reliable infrastructure, freight investments, clean mobility, walking and biking, and investments in transit to connect us to the jobs and housing we need to make our recovery possible. I look forward to working together with you and look forward to the next 2 days of ways in which we will make that recovery possible for the next years to come. With that, it is my pleasure to introduce CalSTA Secretary David Kim. I'm sorry. We have additional commissioner reports. I beg your pardon, commissioners. And I did want to recognize again that Senator Bell is here and will be speaking to us. So commissioners, I open the floor to you to make other reports. Commissioner Kehoe has a report to make.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Appreciate that. Just a best wishes to Lucy Dunn. I wanted to just say a word about how long I've known her. I first met Lucy when she was the director of HCD under Governor Schwarzenegger, and I was in the legislature. And as I recall, Lucy, just as she is at the commission meetings, was always professional, thoroughly informed, relentlessly positive, and it was always a pleasure to work with her and have her come into the office. So I just want to wish her well on her next tour of duty. I'm sure it'll be something exciting. And I thank you for the opportunity to speak. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Kehoe. And we definitely will be doing an event for Lucy. And I know Fran is also interested in speaking, and we are going to have an in-person event for Lucy sometime in the future when we can all meet in person. And with that, I'd like to call on Commissioner Inman. Commissioner Inman, you had a report?
Thank you, Chair Norton. I'll save my, yes, I do. And I'll save my Lucy applause for the I Love Lucy event. I'm looking forward to that. It was a pleasure to serve with her. But on my commission report, I just want to report that I'm working with our supply chain partners to make sure that we're prepared when a vaccine becomes available. It's all high probability we're going to need refrigeration. And so just trying to check on what kind of resources we have. I know one of our Class 1 rail partners has just made a large purchase of refrigerated rail cars. It's lots of unknowns here in terms of where it might come from and what the distribution pattern might look like, but we are collectively coming together to try to identify that we will have the resources, and then obviously, as we did when COVID-19 began, we will mark our medical cargo and make sure it gets hot cargo treatment. So just wanted to report that. Looking forward to the day we have a vaccine.
Well, thank you so much, Commissioner Inman. The work on freight has been keeping our economy moving, and we thank you for your steadfast work in this regard. Are there any other commissioners who would like to present reports today? If not, I just did want to make sure that within my remarks, I was also stating that we would be working with the community members and advocates as we move forward on the listening sessions and in every bit of the work that we do. I am so pleased that the CTC is an agency that has done a number of listening sessions and tutorial sessions to democratize the work of the CTC and to make the work we do more understandable as we move forward with addressing new projects and discussing our new guidelines so that we can build a better California together. With that, I'm going to move to the next item, and thank you for your patience. Secretary Kim, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, commissioners, commission staff, and members of the public. I hope you can hear me okay.
Yes.
I'd like to begin by briefly congratulating and thanking Commissioner Lucy Dunn for her many years of distinguished service. She has been a really important part of this commission going back to 2008. And I just want to say what a privilege it has been for me to work with Commissioner Dunn. She and I go back many years, and we first got to know each other well before I came to this position while I was still in DC. And as Chair Norton indicated at the outset, there will be an I Love Lucy event at a future date. That's a great name, by the way, whoever came up with it. Kudos to you. And I look forward to honoring Lucy at that time and recognizing her many contributions in shaping the landscape in California. I also want to congratulate Commissioner Norton for two things. First, her election as Commission Chair, and second, for being confirmed by the State Senate on July 30th. Both are very exciting, and I know the Commission will be in good hands as she begins her tenure as Chair. And I'm really struck by the fact that Chair Norton has been on the Commission for less than a year, and in that time, she has clearly made an impact and has brought great leadership and passion, and all of us are going to continue to benefit from her leadership. And also a huge congratulations to Commissioner Alvarado for being elected as Vice Chair. The Commission has new leadership, and I think all of us in the Commission will be well served by both Chair Norton and Vice Chair Alvarado. Want to give a quick update on racial equity and justice in transportation. You might recall I put out a statement in June, and now we are working to turn those words into meaningful action. One of these actions is supporting a group of 16 staff from our agency and the various CalSTAT departments to participate in the upcoming Capital Collaborative on Race and Equity, also known as CORE training. As some of you know, CORE is a racial equity capacity building program for state employees. It provides 50 hours of racial equity training over a period of 15 months. It's going to start later this month, and we've got participants from CalSTA, Caltrans, CHP, DMV, High Speed Rail Authority, Office of Traffic Safety, and the New Motor Vehicle Board. All of these individuals will make up the CalSTA core team. And I also want to give a shout out to the Commission for supporting your own team who will also participate in the core training. They're going to be working hand in hand with us at CalSTA to advance racial equity in transportation. One of the deliverables of this training will involve developing a racial equity action plan for each participating department. The plan is going to be made up of a series of actions which will guide our organizations in advancing equity, especially to benefit Californians who have been most impacted by systemic racism and unjust transportation decisions. On top of that, CalSTA is supporting the efforts of the California Advisory Committee on Geographic Names, which is managed by the Natural Resources Agency under the leadership of my colleague, Secretary Wade Crowfoot. The Advisory Committee will review and assess place names that may need to be changed in light of the governor's commitment to redress historic inequities and racism. We at CalState are going to play a role by helping to identify names associated with transportation facilities that may be outdated. So for example, are there any state-owned highways, bridges, tunnels, interchanges, and so forth that are named after individuals whose histories are marked by acts of racism, discrimination, or oppression? That's the task before us, and it's another example of the actions we are taking to address racial equity and to redress past wrongs in transportation. I also want to give a brief update on implementation of the Governor's Climate Change Executive Order N1919. First, a big thanks to many of you for your early engagement as we develop a transportation action plan for the executive order. And in particular, I really appreciate the comments earlier in the meeting from the regional agencies group, as well as the Rural Counties Task Force. We hear you all the way, and we want to continue to work with you and continue to get your feedback. Just to refresh your memory, N1919 directs CalState to leverage discretionary state transportation dollars to reduce GHG emissions in the transportation sector. And it really dovetails with our current circumstances as we think about economic recovery and the future of transportation in a post-pandemic world. As we've all seen over the past many months, there is a connection between respiratory diseases like COVID-19 and air quality and carbon emissions. So I think it's imperative that we take steps to ensure that transportation investments are done in a way that reduces the climate crisis instead of exacerbating it. So to that end, we've held numerous early stakeholder engagement meetings over the past 5 months. In fact, we have talked to over 200 partners about what the executive order can mean for California. And we really appreciate all of you who responded to our most recent survey. We are going through those survey results right now, and we'll spend the next few weeks incorporating your feedback to make sure strategies and potential actions we take embrace the sentiment of stakeholders as much as possible. We also plan to hold workshops this fall, and that will give everyone further opportunities to weigh in. And finally, we're looking forward to providing presentations and updates at future CTC meetings, as well as joint meetings between CTC, CARB, and HCD. Next, I want to briefly turn to transit. One of the agenda items for today's meeting is the Transit and Unicity Rail Capital Program, TIRCP. The Commission will take action on the first set of Cycle 4 allocations. As you might remember, we announced in April our 5-year program of projects totaling $500 million in TIRCP grant awards for 17 projects throughout the state. And that's something I noted at the April 29th Commission meeting. So we're excited to be moving forward with allocations toward 4 of these projects today. I also want to briefly note the important progress we are making on the California Integrated Travel Project, also known as CAL-ITP. About a month ago, Monterey Salinas Transit entered into a partnership with CAL-ITP and Visa to demonstrate contactless payments on their entire bus fleet. The demonstration will help those who do not have bank accounts, the unbanked. They're going to be able to use prepaid Visa debit cards to pay their fare. The project will also allow people to use any Visa or MasterCard credit or debit card in their wallet or the mobile wallet on their phone, like Apple Pay, Google Pay, and Samsung Pay. We're really excited about the partnership with Monterey Salinas Transit because it's going to demonstrate that CAL-ITP will make it easier to pay for transit and safer as well. We're also working on lowering the cost of credit and debit card transactions for transit throughout the state. And given the economic hardship facing so many, every dollar saved really does count. Finally, with regard to COVID-19, we continue to be laser focused on emergency response. As I mentioned in previous meetings, I'm leading the Transportation and Critical Infrastructure Task Force of the Governor's Unified Coordination Group. This is a task force that includes a large number of departments throughout state government, including Caltrans, DMV, CHP, Department of Food and Agriculture, GoBiz, California Energy Commission, and many others. As a task force, we've taken steps to head off disruptions to the supply chain. And despite a recent uptick in COVID-19 cases, the transportation sector remains stable. And I also want to respond to a comment Commissioner Inman made just a few minutes ago with respect to distribution of vaccines. Once a vaccine is developed and manufactured, it's going to be a massive logistical undertaking to distribute vaccines, not just millions, but hundreds of billions of vaccines worldwide. This is not just a California issue, it's a worldwide issue. but nevertheless, as one of the largest economies in the world, we're going to be playing a role. And we've entered into discussions. We've had internal discussions and conversations with Cal OES, CDPH, and many others within state government to begin the process of planning. How are we going to distribute hundreds of millions of vaccines throughout the country, including in California? So I'm glad Commissioner Inman raised that point. It's going to be a huge issue and a massive effort ahead in the months ahead. Also, to get ahead of the curve, I've asked Caltrans and other task force members to outline anticipated issues in a potential second wave of COVID-19 and also identify 15, 30, 60-day priorities and objectives to address those issues. We're going to be discussing these plans with Cal State department heads and also within the task force. We're also working with Cal OES to obtain sufficient quantities of PPE for Cal State departments, especially N95 face masks for work that's being done in proximity of wildfires. So there's a lot on the plate with the state's ongoing response to the pandemic. And on top of that, as well as you all know, wildfire season is upon us. So our agency and the entire administration are involved in managing multiple situations at the same time. And with that, Madam Chair, that concludes my remarks. Thank you for the time, and I look forward to today's meeting. Thanks.
Thank you very much for your very, very thorough report, Secretary Kim. It's clear that you're doing a tremendous amount of work on these issues, especially in the midst of pandemic and to strike, and we thank you for your dedication and your whole team's dedication. Similarly, we are very interested in hearing the report from Caltrans Director Topes Omishakin of the work that Caltrans is doing in similar challenging circumstances. Director Omishakin?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, members of the public, commissioners, and CTC staff. I want to start off briefly by congratulating our new chair. Congratulations on this. Not only being appointed by the Senate a few weeks ago, but also becoming chair of the commission. And also congratulations to Vice Chair Alvarado for your appointment as well as vice chair. Also want to thank Commissioner Dunn for her service to the commission and her service just across the state in the last several years. I've only had a chance to know Commissioner Dunn for the brief period that I've been here in California, but found her to be very smart and very understanding of issues related to housing and land use and transportation. So I just want to thank her for her leadership and service to the state as well. And I want to thank just the rest of the commission, just for commission and staff, for the resilience and continuing to move forward with these meetings. It's not just us, the departments that are facing a hard time with the challenges that we're all going through, but the CTC staff and commissioners, I know you all are challenged with this as well, and you're pushing through. So thank you for what you continue to do and making sure these the projects that we need to deliver are delivered, and that these important meetings continue to happen. So if I can move into the presentation that I have. Again, at these meetings, I want to take the opportunity, as you've allowed, to recognize important or key staff that are doing amazing work for the department. And at today's meeting, I want to recognize the gentleman that you see, if you can actually view this on a computer or see on a screen. His name is Gurmai Bayenu. Gurmai Bayenu. When we recognize employees who are doing good work, some of the adjectives that we typically use for employees are words like teamwork, leadership, integrity, tenacity, humility. This gentleman encompasses all those qualities that you look for in a very good employee. Let me tell you a story very quickly. Gurmai immigrated from Ethiopia in 2003, so 17 years ago. He had a simple priority: be productive and do honest work when he gets to the United States. He started off in America as a gas station attendant. He accepted a position eventually with Caltrans as a security guard. One day, a Caltrans engineer in the department noticed Gurmai and just started talking to him, discussing things with him, and found out that Gurmai had an engineering degree from Ethiopia, where he worked prior as a transportation engineer. Encouraged by this engineer who was talking to him, this engineer who also became his mentor, Gurmai decided to take, and he passed the engineer's exam, the PE exam in 2004. So a year later, Gurmai hit the ground running, and within 6 years, only within 6 years, he was promoted to senior level engineer in the department. And this growth is not just about what Gurmai has been able to achieve in a short period in working for Caltrans in the state, but also the state has seen the rewards of such a committed employee. His dedication on work can be seen on projects like the SAC 5 corridor enhancement project, where he works on the project as a construction contract administrator and the senior resident engineer. If you're familiar with this project, the SAC 5 corridor enhancement project, it's a $370 million project, so one of our larger projects in the state. It's partially funded by SB1. It goes roughly from Elk Grove Boulevard to the American River. And the project essentially entails rehabbing pavement on I-5 and constructing new HOV lanes and replacing a pedestrian crossing over the interstate. The project is ahead of schedule, and under Gurmai's outstanding leadership, after many weekends of hard work and sleepless nights and tireless negotiation, a $19 million savings for the project was identified. So $19 million in savings was negotiated by this man and his team and the leadership at District 3. So I'm very proud to recognize Gurmai today, not again just because of his story, his unique story of how he came to the country and rose to the level that he's been able to rise to, but also his dedication to the work that we try to get done in the department and the efficiencies that he's helped to deliver. So help me congratulate him whenever you get a chance to see him. And thank you to the District 3 leadership team as well for all the work on this project and other similar projects. So if I could shift gears a little bit, I want to go to some personnel changes. As you know, since I've been around, we've had quite a few changes at the leadership level within the department. Today, I don't have that many to report, only 3 major changes that you'll be hearing about more in the coming months. But today, I rolled out an announcement for the appointment of the new Deputy Director for the Civil Rights Division. This is a critical role in the department. This person is responsible for seeing how we can continue to improve contracting opportunities for small businesses and disadvantaged businesses across the state. But the person that will take the helm of this office is David DeLuce. David served as the Director of Strategic Initiatives for the California School Board Association. That was his most recent job. He also served as President and CEO of the Greater Sacramento Urban League. He was appointed as Deputy Appointment Secretary and then as Chief Community Liaison Officer in the office of Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger. So welcome, David, whenever you get a chance. He will be starting on August 26th. So he's only a week and a half or so away from starting. But I also want to thank Sabrina Watts Jefferson, who has served as Acting Assistant Director for Civil Rights for the department over the last several months. So thanks to Sabrina and congratulations to David. Also want to announce, I think many of you are aware of this already, Dan McElhaney, our District 10 Director, has accepted a position as Chief Operating Officer for the Idaho Department of Transportation. So he's now COO at Idaho DOT. I want to congratulate and thank him for his 30+ years of service to Caltrans. Effective immediately as of last week, Dennis T Agar has been appointed Interim District Director for District 10. Dennis, in his immediate previous role, was the headquarters division chief of maintenance for headquarters. And prior to that, Dennis also served as the District 10 director for 4.5 years. So Dennis is headed back to District 10. I want to thank him for all the work he's done in the maintenance shop as he heads back to Stockton to lead District 10. Shifting gears to COVID-19, again, many of us are sort of wading our way through the challenges that we face here. I want to report that the COVID-19 legal truck overweight permit program wrapped up on July 11th of last month. As you remember from prior discussions on this, we were able to come up with a program that allowed a 10% increase in overweight for trucks that will be overweight. So trucks could go from 80,000 pounds to 88,000 pounds on our roadways. Through the period that we were allowing these permits, we saw over 103 transportation permits related to delivering essential goods across the state. So this was a very effective program at allowing overweight trucks on our state network, on our highway system. So I want to thank our staff, the governor's office, CHP, CalSTA, for working with us to help get this program done. And again, that program, this overweight truck program, closed and ended on July 11th. Switching gears to innovation and talking about a little bit of how much of a priority this is for us. And I'm proud of the work that we're beginning to embrace and do more within the department as it relates to innovation. Also in District 3, as mentioned, as I talked about Gurmai before, you may have heard over the last 2 weeks on the Butte State Route 162 pilot project. We paved a 1,000-foot section of State Route 162. And as we paved that project, what's unique about it, and innovative about it was we used recycled asphalt and liquid plastic. We recycled over 150,000 plastic bottles to repave, again, a 1,000-foot section of this highway segment. Very proud to say that our district office, District 3, and the leadership there, Amajit Benepal, they were able to push forward on this unique project. But, you know, whenever we do projects like this, or whenever we pilot innovative approaches like this, I think one of the things we recognize is that there will always be challenges, and we've noticed some peeling in some areas of that project, but overall the project has turned out very well. We're going to continue to assess how that project is doing over time, but I'm just proud of the fact that we're going to continue to embrace innovative approaches to delivering projects and improving our processes within the department. So even though there are mixed results so far, excited that we're going to continue to look at pilot opportunities like this. To the low carbon transit operations program, on July 28th, in coordination with the Air Resources Board, we approved $146 million in low carbon transit operations program for 166 local transportation projects. These projects will improve sustainability and transportation systems to help reduce greenhouse gas emissions across the state. For the agencies that received some of this funding, the $146 million in funding, those that serve disadvantaged communities will be required to at least spend 50% of the total money they receive on disadvantaged communities. So approximately 158 of the 166 projects will benefit disadvantaged communities affected by climate change. This investment will help reduce our impact on the environment and improve transit service particularly for those facing economic barriers to mobility. Greater access to transit options will lead to decreased dependence on driving, and as we know, cleaner air for all Californians. And on that same vein, the Climate Change Vulnerability Assessments Report is also something else innovative that we at Caltrans are doing. And I can attest to this because I have had the opportunity to work in and work with other state DOTs, and none of them are doing climate change vulnerability assessment reports to the extent that we are doing. On July 15, we finalized the last two 12-district based climate change vulnerability assessment reports. These reports provide the department with a comprehensive database that will help with evaluating, mitigating, and adapting to the effects of increased extreme weather events on the state's transportation system. The final two reports cover our coastal districts, District 1 in Eureka, and District 5 in Salinas South to Santa Barbara. The climate effects examined include rise in average temperatures, higher sea level rise, storm surge, and precipitation. These in turn increase the incidence of flooding, drought, wildfires, coastal erosion, and much like. So by doing these assessments, we'll be able to get a sense of where the impacts will be and how we as a department can adapt to making the changes that we need to make in our infrastructure. So these will also come. These also come with an adaptability plan as well. If you want more information on these vulnerability assessments, if you look on our website, look on the 2019 climate change vulnerability assessments. And three more quick items, and I will round up. The California Freight Mobility Plan. I think it was mentioned already by I think Commissioner Inman and Chair Norton. At our March 2020 CTC meeting, Marlon Florlan, our Division Chief of Planning Chief, presented the California Freight Mobility Plan 2020. But on July 20th, just a few weeks ago, we unveiled that plan that focuses on strengthening the state's existing infrastructure and making strategic improvements to further develop an innovative, economically competitive freight system, while at the same time still being good stewards of communities and the environment. Caltrans recognizes the state's freight sector must continue to adapt to maintain competitive advantages while also working towards achieving California's environmental goals. So this plan that was rolled out on July 20th examines such things as e-commerce, 3D printing, autonomous vehicles, and how those could change how industries interact with the freight network. The plan also highlights ways to lessen the freight's potentially negative environmental impacts, particularly on low-income communities near trucking corridors, by reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So if you're looking for more information on the Freight Mobility Plan 2020, just look on our website at the California Freight Mobility Plan 2020. Recently, to another topic, Federal Highways recognized Caltrans and California for our efforts on asset management. In the area of asset management on the federal level, we have continued to be a national leader. And I can, again, attest to this because after I assumed this role, I've had a chance to talk to our asset management leader, Michael Johnson, and you know him well. He's remarked about how at meetings when we could still go to meetings, other state DOTs have made remarks about our asset management plan. Each year, Federal Highways recognizes state DOTs for their work on asset management, and this year, Federal Highways has recognized us for our work in this place and how we continue to make progress consistent with federal requirements. So I want to thank our team for the important work they're doing in asset management, especially with recent funding through SB1 that we're using to deliver a better product with our assets. And finally, the last two items here that are of very much importance to me that I talk to our team about every single day, the safety goal and our equity outlook. As you can see on this particular screen on the slide, if you have a computer to view this, this image and graphic you're looking at is from Interstate 8 near San Diego. One of our maintenance employees were on site on a particular project. As you know already, our maintenance employees take great personal risk every day they do their job. A 18-wheeler, the truck that you see there, the driver fell asleep while driving, and this was just a few weeks ago, and ran into the back of the attenuator truck. You can see the orange line there, that's the Caltrans truck, and the yellow item you see sort of folded up there is the attenuator truck. If that attenuator truck was not there, this Caltrans employee may have suffered serious injury or even more. But again, some of the safety measures that we've put in place to make sure that not only our team continues to be safe as they do work out there, but the moving public as well. We at Caltrans and CalSTA, we are committed to zero deaths. We're involved on many levels in discussions around this with our Chief Safety Officer, Rachel Carpenter, and many others across the department are working in this space. So this is truly our number one priority. I just wanted to show you an example of how this can sometimes impact us, but we were fortunate to be able to curb any serious harm in this incident. And finally, I'm very happy to see that on this meeting agenda, there's an item on equity and a discussion on the makeup of the advisory committee. Director Weiss and I have been in discussions about how this effort will move forward with the CTC. I just want you to know, commissioners and members of the public, we at Caltrans are committed to this issue. It's good to hear Secretary Kim talk about some of the steps that he's taking on this front. We at the department are very much locked into this issue as well. We will be taking some steps internally within the department, and that we will announce and we'll be announcing soon, and look forward to other steps that we'll be taking publicly. Again, we have to get beyond, even though I'm excited about it, and I think it's a good step for us to take, we have to get beyond making announcements that don't actually result in changing people's lives. It's good to see that we're going to take some of the steps that we're going to be taking, like the change in state facilities, state-owned facilities, like the change in names. But we have to get to the place even more where we're delivering true impact to people who live in this state and make a positive difference for the outcomes that they face on a daily basis. So you've got you've got real commitment, sincere commitment from Caltrans, and I look forward to the work that Chair Norton, that you have that you're spearheading with Director Weiss on the equity front as well. So with that concludes my report from Caltrans. Thank you for the continued partnership between all of our respective agencies. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Omashakin, and we want to say thank you so much for your commitment to equity, and especially your phrase of going beyond announcements and into action. We look forward to working with you and your sincere commitment, and we want to thank you for your sincere commitment also in Vision Zero being your number one priority. That is great news, and we really look forward to our partnership together. We have some commissioners who would like to speak to you. First is Commissioner Kehoe.
Thank you, Chair Norton. Actually, I was a little late hitting my button on the last presentation. I wanted to address Secretary Kim if he's still available.
Okay. We will see if we can get.
We're getting a
Secretary
nodding head,
Kim?
so I think he's available.
Okay, Secretary Kim, are you on?
Commissioner Kehoe, this is David Kim. I'm here.
Great.
Hi, Secretary Kim. I wanted to, continue to express my thanks for the way you're handling the Lausanne corridor and keeping the local communities involved. Actually, from the local communities all the way up to Congress. So I very much appreciate that, and I think that's what it's going to take. And I was on listening in on the last, Lausanne working group meeting. I wondered if there's been any updates since then on, going forward with the steps that have to be taken, not so much in the immediate phasing, but in the longer term plans for the right of way and funding.
Right. Thank you, Commissioner, for the question. That is still a work in progress in terms of where we're going to go in terms of a long-term strategy, both from the standpoint of funding as well as different alignments. And so SANDAG is, as you know, hard at work looking at different alternatives in conjunction with other entities like NCTD and of course the various cities throughout the corridor. And so we're still going through that process. I think it's moving along well and moving forward. And it is our hope that by the end of the year, we can, as a group, come to some sort of consensus on what is the long-term direction of the Lausanne corridor. So more to come on that. And I'm so glad you were part of the last meeting. I couldn't see everybody who was on the meeting, the Zoom meeting, but glad you were part of it. Thank you.
I was glad I was there too. And I want to call out not only the work that you and Caltrans are doing, but thanks to Senator Tony Atkins for bringing in multi-million dollars into the project for the current work that's being done. And then also to Congressman Levin further up the road, who brought in $10 million. So I do think it's all hands on deck, and people are coming up with real money to help move the project forward. But as you say, so much more to be done on the long-term questions. But thanks for hanging in there and keeping an eye on the corridor, and we will also stay tuned in. So I appreciate that.
Okay.
Great. Thanks, Commissioner.
Great. I noticed that there are no other questions from commissioners of either Secretary Kim or Director Omashakin, and there are no public comments on this item. Okay, with that, we're going to move. Thank you very much again, and we're going to move to item 12, Keith Dunn with the Self-Help Counties Coalition.
We don't see Keith Dunn logged in. Keith, are you logged in?
Okay. In the interest of time, we'll move, if we can't get him logged in yet, we'll move to the transit operators update with Metrolink CEO Stephanie Wiggins.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair Norton and Commissioners. Congratulations to you, Chair Norton, and Vice Chair Alvarado for your leadership appointments. My name is Stephanie Wiggins. I'm the CEO of Metrolink, and I want to thank you for providing me the opportunity to share how this pandemic has impacted Metrolink and share our efforts to emerge as a smarter, better essential agency to help meet the state's aggressive emissions and congestion relief goals. And I think there's a PowerPoint to accompany my presentation. Thank you, Garth. Next slide. So just to orient the commissioners, Metrolink is the largest commuter rail operator in the state and the third largest commuter rail operator in the country by route miles. We operate 7 lines on 538 miles of railroad that travel to more than 60 stations. Next slide. Those 7 lines serve over 100 communities and create the backbone of Southern California's transit network. We actually operate in 6 counties in Southern California. Next slide. Before the pandemic, our ridership had grown each of the past 5 years, culminating with almost 12 million boardings in fiscal year 19, which was a record for Metrolink. We actually were on pace to break that record in fiscal year 20. So why is that important? Well, 85% of our riders have automobiles, so they were making the smart choice to take their cars off the road really removing an equivalent of 1 lane of traffic on adjacent freeways during the rush hours. And that represented more than 9.3 million car trips and 339 million VMT removed in fiscal year 19. As a result, we removed over 130,000 tons of carbon dioxide from the air, which is the equivalent carbon captured by 153,000 acres of forest. Next slide. So just imagine if there were no Metrolink. Today, our San Bernardino line runs parallel to the I-10 on the picture on the left. The picture on the right illustrates the impact without Metrolink. As you can see, there are more cars on the road and the travel time is longer for the region's drivers, thereby sending more emissions in the air. Now, this is just a depiction, but it's based on facts. With 85% of our riders having access to autos and their average trip length is 36 miles one way, if they aren't on the train, they are driving. So Metrolink benefits the entire region, not just the riders themselves. Next slide. I want to highlight another major benefit of the system. That's that Metrolink serves as a catalyst for home ownership. SCAG produced this map for us that illustrates how Metrolink connects the workforce to their workplace. The areas in yellow are where housing values are the highest, and areas in blue are where housing values are the lowest. And the red lines illustrate where our Metrolink trains operate. So Metrolink enables access to the American dream of home ownership. Next slide. So as I stated earlier, Metrolink was on track to achieve record growth in ridership in fiscal year 20, but on March 11th, when the global pandemic was declared, our ridership declined, falling at its lowest to 90% below our pre-COVID ridership levels. And this is represented in this graphic by the blue line. However, as stay-at-home orders have been slowly relaxed, our ridership has been gradually increasing. We're currently at about 83% below last year's ridership levels. Next slide. When the pandemic hit and the stay-at-home orders were put in place, we knew that we had to talk immediately and often to our customers, both those who had stopped riding and those who were still riding. We had to shift to a different style of communication, one which addresses people's fears in their everyday lives, and one that requires us to be better connected now more than ever with our riders, employers, and the community. So we deployed a survey in late April to better understand our riders' concerns and expectations in this COVID environment. We learned that over 71% of those still riding self-identify as essential workers, and 39% of them work in the healthcare sector. The results tell us that 81% of Metrolink respondents plan to return, but only 29% said they would return as soon as the stay-at-home orders are lifted. They also told us what it would take for them to feel more comfortable returning, namely trains that are cleaned and disinfected, the ability to social distance, and hand sanitizers on every train car were at the top of their list. Next slide. So we've used this input to inform our 5-point recovery framework. Next slide. At Metrolink, safety is foundational. Face masks and coverings are required by everyone, team members and riders on board Metrolink trains and at stations. We are experiencing a 99% compliance rate with this requirement. We've added signage at stations and on trains to help riders practice social distancing. We recently launched a new digital tool called How Full Is My Train? So riders can check the level of crowding before they take their trip. And we're promoting our mobile app as an option for contactless ticketing. Next slide. From our survey, we know that riders are concerned about cleanliness, so we're engaging in operational transparency by proactively showing riders our enhanced efforts, like expanding our clean care crews operations so that they are on board the train, and installing hand sanitizer stations on every rail car and upgrading our air filters. Next slide. The pandemic, though, is more than a crisis. It truly is a disruption that is challenging long-held assumptions and operating practices. And so our recovery framework includes a structural response and not just a symptomatic response. Metrolink is creating a different business model to support economic recovery goals and job creation targets for all riders. including the more essential workers who are more likely to be low income and rely on Metrolink for transportation because they have no personal vehicle available to them. To ensure accessibility and affordability for our service, Metrolink is considering new fare products, including a low-income fare discount. We also are developing family-friendly incentives such as kids ride free on weekends and business incentives through a loyalty program. Next slide. As we move from response to recovery, our intention is to be flexible while taking a measured approach to implement strategic and sustainable service. Accordingly, our service may not be restored the way we reduced it. This also gives us an opportunity to improve collaboration with our partners. The question exchange with Commissioner Kehoe and Secretary Kim reinforces one of the areas that we're looking at by including enhancing our collaboration with state-supported service such as LoSAN and other transit partners in the region. Additionally, we are going to work to keep capital and state of good repair projects on track. These projects improve our system and help our economy grow. We've identified alone more than $1 billion of shovel-ready state of good repair projects. Next slide. The fifth point of the framework is sustainable financial performance. This pandemic has ushered us to be laser focused on efficiency, and as a result, with the support from federal and state entities, we have an opportunity to not only survive the pandemic, but thrive. Next slide. So with that in mind, time has not stood still over the past few months at Metrolink. Our staff has pulled together and kept our service running safely and reliably. As an example, we implemented a 30% service reduction in 72 hours. Our system has become cleaner as we deployed more Tier 4 locomotives and retired the last of our 38 Tier 0 locomotives from our fleet. Our SCORE program has moved forward into the environmental phase, and we recently completed an upgrade of our ticket vending machines so they are now state-of-the-art and 100% ADA compliant. This has not been an easy time. However, I'm proud of our team for showing their resolve to continue serving our riders and the region. Next slide. So that's a quick summary of our approach to recover our ridership post-COVID-19. Trust and confidence is the key to ridership recovery. How do we get there when we're living in an environment today where every day is a new day? Well, at Metrolink, we know that we have to emerge from this pandemic as the best version of our agency to restore confidence that public transit is safe in this environment. We need to be smarter about how we solve problems to address customer needs. We need to provide a better service because we are essential to the community we serve and to the economy of our region. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that thorough presentation. Are there any questions of Stephanie Wiggins? If none and no public comment, we want to thank you for a great presentation and we look forward to our work together. Have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you so much. And with that, I must apologize. I skipped over Vince Mamano, the FHWA California Division Administrator. I know I'm going to pay for that. So without further ado, Vince, take it away.
Oh, that's going to cost you, I'm sure. I would like to say, you know what, I'm going to blame it on your vice chair, because a vice chair shouldn't let something like that happen, and that's the role of the vice chair. So I think that you should be ready for this type of incompetency from the new vice chair. So just be ready for that. But I think you're abroad, you can overcome that, I think. So I want to congratulate you in your new role, and I guess I'll congratulate the vice chair also, but ask him to step up his game. And also I want to thank Lucy Dunn. Take a quick second. Lucy and I actually got to the commission the same time I got here to California. So I met her early in my career here in California, and I've enjoyed working with her, had a lot of great discussion. And I heard Toke say something earlier about somebody saying they made a difference and made a positive difference. And I always tell people, you either make a negative difference or a positive difference. You never make no difference. And Lucy made a positive difference. So I want to congratulate her on all the great work that she did. So a couple things. I spoke about this at the last meeting, but I feel like I need to speak about this every time. The FAST Act expires, so that's our authorizing legislation. The FAST Act expires September 30th of this year. So that is our authorizing legislation, and if there is no reauthorization of that or extension of that, then we will not be able to move forward with transportation projects here in California or anywhere around the country. So the FAST Act expires on September 30th. In our last presentation kind of hit on this, the Highway Trust Fund and the funding that's there. We talked about this also. The Highway Trust Fund is going to be reaching a critical point in the spring of 2021. We were anticipating that to be later, and looking at a possible shortfall in the summer of 2021 or earlier. If you go to our Federal Highway website, you can just do a quick search that says status of the Highway Trust Fund, and that'll tell you where we're at with the Highway Trust Fund. And just looking at it right now, the opening balance as of July is 24% down from what it was last year, and the closing balance is down 57%. So we're talking about quite a deficit there, or the direction it's going. So unless something happens with a new authorization or some sort of a fix from the general fund, we will have to be taking some countermeasures in the summer of 2021. Build grants, those applications we all know closed on May 18th. No word on when those projects will be selected. Just as a heads up, last year, those were announced in, I think it was November of last year. So I don't know when they will be announced, but that may give an idea of when they might be announced. The DBE commitment at award, I know Tokes talked about their new civil rights deputy director, David DeLuce. So he's got a lot of work to do there. I've met David. He's a good man. So I think look forward to working with him. But our goal here in California is 17.6%. Year-to-date commitment at award is 18.04%. So that's a good sign. Again, that's come a long way over the last 10 years, but it's not where we want to be from uniformity in that. So we're looking for a lot of work to be done there. But I also want to, along that same line, I want to commend Tokes for the move they made in the Civil Rights Unit. Not only did they change the title of that unit back to Civil Rights, but he also raised that position to a deputy director level. So when you've heard all the stuff he's talking about, inclusion and all that work he's trying to do there, he's raised that civil rights manager position to a deputy director. So that's a very high level at Caltrans. So that position is going to continue to have a even louder voice than it had before. So I want to commend Caltrans on that, and I will reserve the right at a later date to have the repercussions for skipping me today. And that's all I got.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or input from the commissioners? Okay, is there any public comment requested? Thank you so much, Vincent Romano. We really appreciate your time. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Until next time. Item 12, Keith Dunn, we want to come back to you. Is your audio working now? Self-Help Counties Coalition Executive Director Keith Dunn. Okay. Well, with that, if we can't get you back on, Keith, we're going to move to item 14, state and federal legislative matters. Paul Golozewski. And before we go to item 14, I did want to announce that Assembly Member Frazier has joined us as well. Thank you very much for being part of this meeting, especially as we're about to get to state and federal legislative matters. Thank you, Paul. Are you ready? And is your audio working? Okay. We're just experiencing some technical difficulties, but we have Paul. We're looking at him here in the CTC offices. So Try
Can you
again.
hear me?
You ready? Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, apologize for that. Camera froze. Commissioners, tab 14 is an action item to accept the staff report on state legislation. The legislative session is drawing to a close, and the last day for bills to be passed is August 31st. Commission staff have included in the book item a report on Senate Bill 1351 by Senator Bell, as it would affect programs under the purview of the Commission by authorizing the use of revenue bonds backed by certain SB1 funds to accelerate SHOP projects in order to stimulate the economy. There are two main issues as they pertain to the Commission and its programs. First, because the bill changes the underlying fund source, or the color of money, so to speak, for various programs in the road maintenance and rehabilitation account, in order to separate funds to pledge for the bond, there is an unintended impact on the Commission's local partnership program. Specifically, the change in the fund sources means the Commission would no longer be able to fund certain transit equipment and vehicle projects, including zero-emission buses in the local partnership program. I would also note that the fund source change may also affect planning grants and research funded from this account as they relate to transit. Second, the bill as initially drafted had assigned to the Commission the responsibility for selecting SHOP projects to accelerate and for requesting the issuance of the bonds. Amendments made last Thursday, however, removed the Commission from the bill and instead assigns these responsibilities to Caltrans. Staff would note that the Commission has a central role in the SHOP program. It adopts the fund estimate and the program of SHOP projects, and also allocates the funds to the program using an open and transparent process that provides accountability. That concludes my remarks. I can take any questions.
Okay. Are there comments from our commissioners? I see that Commissioner Liu would like to make a few comments.
Yes, hi. Thank you, Chair. Nice to say Chair. You know, this legislative process this year is truncated and even more unpredictable than normal, and normal is pretty unpredictable too. And I think this bill, and maybe Senator Bell can help with this, is still a bit of a moving target, and there were ongoing discussions taking place. And I share that our staff's concerns about the impact that this bill may have in its current form on the local partnership program and transportation research funding, and the Commission's role in the SHOP project review and selection process. And I would like to make a motion that we give the chair authority on behalf of the Commission to take a position on SB 1351 in the future, upon consultation with less than a quorum of the commissioners and based on changes that may take place in the bill.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second to that motion? I'm happy to second that, actually. So, Douglas, we'd like you to call a roll. We'd like you to call a roll if we'd like to. Senator Bell would like to speak as well. I'd like to have Senator Bell speak, but then call the roll. But we're getting a little bit of feedback. I'm sorry for people who aren't in the room. It's why there's a little bit of a hesitation. But Senator Bell, this is your legislation, so we'd love to hear you speak, and then we would plan to take a vote.
Hi, everybody. This is Senator Bell. Can you hear me? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, everybody. This is this particular piece of legislation has come out of the Economic Recovery Task Force at the California Senate. We have a task force looking at the economic impacts of the COVID-19 disaster from the health and economic standpoint. The chairs are Senator Hertzberg and Bradford, and they are looking at ways to stimulate the economy, create jobs in light of the fact that we're looming unemployment, looming evictions, homelessness, and so forth. So the broader context of this from the California State Senate, and now we have concurrence with the Assembly leadership. So both the leadership in the Senate and the leadership in the Assembly are co-working on this. In fact, Senator Tony Atkins is working very hard with Speaker Rendon on this and other economic recovery stimulus programs as we speak. This particular component of it deals with the transportation component, and the component is essentially to take the transportation improvement fee, a portion of it, not all of it, a portion of the money going into the shop for state projects, not all of it, and use the funds to pay the debt service on revenue bonds that would finance shop projects, that would create new jobs, that would have an impact of ameliorating the economic problems of the state of California, and be part of our package of economic recovery, which will probably include things like green jobs, housing, selling further revenue bonds in other areas that the state has already authorized or will authorize. Senator Hertzberg and Bradford in the committee has already supported and approved this. This has been supported by the Assembly Transportation Committee. Jim Frazier is on the line. He can perhaps give his thoughts. He's now the principal co-author of the bill. So we want to address the particular issues that the commission has raised. I'll address the bonding issue. The bill does not change the role of the commission in terms of the responsibility you have under SB 1, the new responsibilities you have under SB 1. The commission is responsible for looking at the efficiency of the shop, approving the list of shop projects, the 5-year program, and then creating a further list that goes beyond that. I would call that the contingency list. We were not changing the process we set up because we think the process that has been set up under SB 1 is the correct process. What it does do is it establishes a bonding finance mechanism to fund some of the projects that will be in the shop. And the projects will be taken under the statute from the list of projects that are in the shop and be funded with bond funding. The legislature has never given, nor the commission has ever had, the responsibility of approving bonds. And other than the Garvey bonds, which are mainly project-based bonds, this is a general revenue bond. This has always been the purview of the state legislature, and we feel it should be, because our responsibility under the Constitution is to budget, determining the amount of the overall amount of the budget, and to approve those policies that we desire to implement the budget. So this bill is consistent with the Constitution, consistent with our responsibilities as legislators. And other than the Garvey process, there is no, past, where the commission will veto legislative or have oversight over legislative decisions to approve bonds. So that is something I wanted to make sure that you were aware of. I think we're not changing your responsibilities. You still have the responsibilities to oversight the shop. Now, I'd like to address the local state partnership program. When we created that in SB1, that fund, we decided that we wanted to have a fund to encourage local governments, county, cities, other agencies to additionally fund projects and seek their own revenue sources. We want to encourage them to put measures on the ballot themselves locally to fund projects and help us in a way by incentivizing them to do so. And that's the purpose of that particular fund. Some of the funds that have been funded in the past have been buses and various vehicles, and those funds cannot be used, as the staff points out correctly, funded with the gas tax, but has to be funded with the transportation improvement fee, which is not constrained by Article 19 of the state constitution, as opposed to the gas tax. So we have looked at that, and those portion of projects that are in that particular category amount to a very small, less than, I think, a very small amount of the total amount of money that has been thus allocated to those kinds of projects. We're talking about a minor amount. Our opinion is that the minor amount can be adjusted. We will be happy to discuss this with you to accommodate maybe other sources of funds or moving money around to fund various bus procurement projects. The bus procurement part of the local partnership is not really a big part of it. The bigger bus procurement program that we fund is done through the cap and trade program. We approved SB 824 a few years ago to allow a 5-year allocation for bus procurement equipment, transit equipment, and bus rolling stock. So that fund is the larger main fund for those kinds of activities in the state budget. I think that could be between the two funds and other funds, that those particular issues regarding bus procurement, we're happy to look at that and help you with that. I don't think it's a big issue in terms of the dollar amount compared to what we're trying to do with the multi-billion-dollar bond proposal to get more basic shop work out the door and increase. Now, in terms of the bonding, our thoughts are this: we've been working with the Treasurer, Bond Council, others in terms of what the appropriate amount, and the general direction that we got from Senator Hertzberg and Bradford was between $6 and $9 billion. The work we've done with Treasurer, we identified how much the annual debt service would be. It appears that the annual debt service is landing on sort of a 20-year bond as opposed to a longer term. And the interest rates are much lower, in the 2 to 3% range. And we feel that those are excellent rates for bonds at this time. And we feel that it's, as opposed to maybe some other times when the rates are be higher, this is an excellent time to take advantage of the low rates. And especially since we have a large demand for work on the part of people that need work. And so the overall goal is to create work for people, to use our shop program, to use our shop program to help people that may lose their homes, that are unemployed, and literally, we're talking about millions of people. This won't solve the problem for everybody, but we should answer that question. How can we help? How can we help this situation in our state for our Californians that are in trouble right now? And this is why we made this proposal. So in terms of the nature of the proposal, I hope the commission will support it. It appears that the legislature is going to be supporting this bill. We will work with you on any of the details that you have raised regarding some of the issues. So I want to thank you all for your attention to this. We think that economic benefit is very important to the state of California right now in terms of, a counter-cyclical investment in infrastructure is always one of the best ways you can help prevent a spiraling depression. And counter-cyclical infrastructure investments are going to be a tactic, I hope, that we get from the United States government to help the United States to avoid the counter-cyclical economic downturns. This is the way we can respond to that. And it's a very good interest rate. The state will benefit greatly by this. I hope you can support this. Thank you. And I know your motion doesn't deal with whether or not you support it or not. I don't think that's, there is nobody that's right now sending any information saying they're against it, but people are concerned about it. But I think that the legislature is going to be moving forward with this proposal. So I hope you can support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We do want to reiterate that the commission is very committed to stimulating the economy as well. And we want to also call on Assemblymember Frazier, because I believe you had some comments you'd like to make on this as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, thank you so very much. First off, I just have to, acknowledge, thank God for SB1, or we wouldn't be having this conversation. One of the things that we really do need to acknowledge in purpose is that when we were looking at the revenue decline coming forward before SB1, we had tens of billions of dollars of deferred maintenance in the SHOP program. And one of the things that we were looking at was trying to acknowledge that we need to get ahead of the curve. And in my component of AB1, when Senator Bell and I were both in our houses working our bills, and we co-joined as SB1, we did have this component in there so that there was an ability to create a revenue bond capability to get out ahead of the curve and try to catch up. One of the things we look at is in declining revenue now, I think they project, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a $1.7 billion reduction in revenue coming up on the gas tax. And this, as Senator Bell has mentioned, is a perfect opportunity to go out, invigorate the economy in so many different ways with the multiplier that it accomplishes. The jobs created going forward, and making sure that we're making that investment in our asset, which is the pavement and all of the SHOP capabilities. So wanting to say in uncertain times, as has been mentioned, that we need to make sure that we can focus on a priority and don't sweat the little things at this point in time. We need to make sure that we can get out ahead and make this accomplished with the highest unemployment rate that we've ever seen, and people still haven't gotten paid from March with unemployment. We need to be able to get these programs going fast, and hope that the commission will be, as the chair has mentioned, a willing partner going forward, and making sure that we go forward and make sure we partner to accomplish the intended outcome for SB1, but also augmenting it with this process, $6 to $9 billion will be an amazing opportunity with that going forward. And with that, I just hope that the commission can completely acknowledge and support this going forward. And I thank you for the time, Chair.
Thank you very much, Assemblyman Frazier. Next is Commissioner Gardena.
I like the sound of that, Chair Norton. I want to start by thanking Chairman Bell and Chairman Frazier for their leadership on this current effort, their leadership on Senate Bill 1, and the efforts that they have made in their roles as chair of the respective houses' transportation committees. I also just, if I may, Madam Chair, thank a member of our staff, Alika Changizi, for finding a way for me to participate today. I've been on the line since 1:08 p.m., but we couldn't get the volume to work, so you're actually hearing me through her cell phone, which is the only way we could get it so this could work. So for the record, I support Hillary Norton as chair and Bob Alvarado as vice chair, and understand that the record could show that, since you couldn't hear me try to say that when that was happening today. On this, with such an unusual time in our globe and our state trying to work through a legislative session in just a matter of weeks, we are obviously trying to find an unusual way to still add value to the discussion on Senate Bill 1351. And as we consider how we best continue to provide feedback as a commission, Chair Norton, if I can help in any way as we continue to look at this internally, I would be honored to do so. It resonates with me that we want to try to make sure that we do have increased bonding capacity to continue to move improvements forward, which also has the tremendous added value of continuing to put people back to work in our state. So if I can be of help, Chair Norton, before we move forward in this shortened legislative session, I wanted to volunteer to be able to do so. And if there's a small group that doesn't represent a quorum, that would also be working on that as a commission with our staff. I think it might be helpful to identify who that would be today. And I want to thank you again for putting up with the technological problems that have avoided me to participate in the traditional way today.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We're glad to have you on, Commissioner Gardena. And I'd like to call on the author of the motion, Commissioner Liu, so that he can give us some further details, and then we can take a vote, because I do think it's important that we continue to work with Senator Bell and Assemblyman Frazier to make sure that we can get to some agreements and be fluid as this process moves forward.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Liu?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to close this conversation and encourage everyone to read the bill analysis, which points out the several reasons why we should proceed with bonding and stimulating the economy in this manner. I have no objections to, considering that and potentially for us supporting it. I am, continue to be concerned about what staff has pointed out in terms of their more technical issues, and we do think most of them are unintentional, that perhaps could be fixed during this legislative process, which is why I'm not proposing a position at this point, but authorizing you as chair to then take a position, as this legislative process closes out in the next couple of weeks, based on further considerations and in consultation with less than a quorum of our commissioners. Thank you.
Okay, that's great. And I believe that would mean that of which you and Commissioner Gardena would be two of them on that, less than a quorum of commissioners. Okay, great. All right, with that, Douglas, we would like to take a vote. Could you call the roll, please?
Do you need do we have a second? Did we get a second on the motion?
I seconded the motion, yes.
Oh, okay. All right. Just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Alvarado.
Yes.
Commissioner Burke. Commissioner Burke.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Davis.
Yes.
Commissioner Eager.
Aye.
Commissioner Gardena.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Inman.
Aye, and I'll volunteer if you need others.
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons.
Commissioner Kehoe.
Aye.
Commissioner Liu.
Aye.
Commissioner Tavoloni. Chair Norton.
Aye.
Madam Chair, the motion is approved.
Thank you very much. Paul, are there any other items in your legislative report?
Nope, that was all.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Do we need to move the entire legislative report now that we've taken this motion, Douglas?
Yes.
Okay, so we need a motion. Commissioner Gardena?
I would like to make that motion. Thank you.
I will second that motion.
Okay, Douglas, please call the roll.
Commissioner Alvarado.
Yes.
Commissioner Burke.
Aye.
Commissioner Davis.
Yes.
Commissioner Eager.
Aye.
Commissioner Gardena.
Aye.
Commissioner Inman.
Aye.
Commissioner Kehoe.
Aye.
Commissioner Liu.
Aye.
Commissioner Tavoloni. Chair Norton.
Aye.
Chair, the motion is approved.
Okay, wonderful. With that, we're going to move on to an item that we've been skipping over a couple times, and now we know he's back on the line, and that is item 12, Self-Help Counties Coalition, Keith Dunn. Presentation by Keith Dunn. Keith, do we have you on?
He's on the line and he shows he's unmuted.
Keith? Okay, you'll have to work out with Douglas again how we get you back on, but we are interested in your presentation, we promise. Okay, so next I'm gonna, he says he's here. Is there any way to get him on? Is there microphone issues on your end, Keith? Okay. 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 He's going to try to get back on, and we'll move on to the next item, which is number 15, the budget and allocation capacity. Paul?
Yes, Commissioners, tab 15 is an information item on budget and allocation capacity. Keith Duncan from Caltrans will first give a presentation, and then after Keith's presentation, I'd like to provide some additional comments. Is Keith Duncan on?
Great. This is Keith. Am I coming through clearly?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. I apologize for that. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Commissioners. As Paul mentioned, my name is Keith Duncan, and I'm with the Caltrans Division of Budget. And today I'll be providing the budget and allocation capacity update. Let's see, the presentation is not necessarily on the screen that I can see. Since we recently finished the 1920 fiscal, okay, thank you. Next slide, please. Thank you. Since we just recently finished the 1920 fiscal year, we wanted to share a few year-end summary information for the first few slides. To begin, for last fiscal year, the Commission allocated about $5.7 billion, or 80% of the available $7.1 billion capacity, and that was allocated towards 959 projects across all transportation programs under the Commission's purview. A couple of highlights from last year. First, for the SHOP program, in total, the Commission allocated $3.5 billion for 524 projects. As noted on the slide, it represents 100% of the 1920 capacity that was available. But in fact, the original capacity was a little below $3.4 billion for the year. So the SHOP program actually got a head start. Not only did they fully commit their 1920 capacity that was available, but they got a jump start and started using their upcoming year, the 2021 allocation capacity. So kudos to the program for getting the projects going and putting the revenue to work right away. The second highlight for the STIP program, the Commission allocated $335 million, which represents about 86% of the available capacity for the program, and that was spread to 95 projects. And Adam, as noted on the slide itself, for clarification, about $1.4 billion of the 1920 capacity was not allocated, but that amount is not lost. That remaining capacity will be rolled over to the upcoming 2021 fiscal year for those respective programs, so they can continue to deliver on their program of projects. Next slide, please. For our next year in summary, we wanted to provide you a G12 progress report for the fiscal year. As you know, the G12 represents the delegated authority by the Commission to Caltrans to make project budget adjustments, either increases or decreases to project funding. Those adjustments for projects that are less than $1 million that has been allocated by the Commission, the adjustments can be no more than $200,000, either up or down. And for those projects that are allocated by the Commission of $1 million or more, those adjustments can be no more than $200,000 plus 10% of the allocated amounts. For the year, the department processed 423 adjustments for projects, and in total, there was a net savings of $310 million. For further breakdown, within the SHOP program alone, there were 410 projects that received an adjustment that resulted in a total of $313 million in net savings. And for the STIP program, 13 projects received an adjustment and an approximately increase of about $4 million. For comparison purposes, in comparing the 1920 G12 adjustments to the prior year, the 1819. In 1819, the SHOP program in total, the G12 adjustments resulted in a $131 million net savings. So the difference between the 131 and 313 is about $180 million in net savings, which is a great feat. And then within the STIP program, in 1819, there was a net increase of about $5 million. So in comparing 1819 to 1920, there's about $1 million in less of increased adjustments. As previously mentioned at previous Commission meeting presentations, we wanted to highlight the SHOP adjustments and specifically the decrease that's identified in the table, decrease of about $434 million for 271 projects. As we've shared, as we experienced during the Great Recession about 10 years ago, we know that we experienced bid savings, a competitive bidding environment. So bid savings range anywhere from 20 to 30%. So as we progressed through the last fiscal year and as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and the economic downturn, we started to see an increase in the competitive bid environment. So we started to see an increase in bid savings. So we were monitoring that information quite closely. As an example, for the month of July, bid savings that came through for the SHOP, the bid savings, the lowest bid as compared to engineer's estimate was about a 20 to 22% savings. So we continue to see that savings coming to fruition, so we'll monitor that quite closely. Next slide, please. For this next slide, we were recently asked, given the COVID-19 pandemic and the shutdowns and the folks transitioning from working from the office to home, we were recently asked, how did the 1920 allocation progress compare to prior years? So on this slide here, in looking at the slide, a quick background. There on the left, vertical axes represents the percent allocated as we progress through the fiscal year. And then the horizontal axis represents the fiscal year, typically July through June. But as you know, the first meeting for the commission is in August, so that's why the scale is from August to June. The three lines represent the three prior fiscal years. The golden line represents this most recent 1920 fiscal year. The grayish line represents the 1819 year, and the orangish red line represents the 1718 year, which happens to be the first year of revenues as a result of the passage of Senate Bill 1. In focusing on the golden line there, you can see we actually started the year in August below the prior 2 years in general trends. In fact, it was about a 10 to 15% percentage point difference. As you move from August through January, while we did have a modest increase in the allocation capacity that was allocated, percent allocated, we weren't necessarily catching up. And then when March hit, and as the stay-at-home orders and the transition to working from home, that's where we'll say the fear of if there was going to be a slowdown. And as you can see, from March through June, there was a drastic increase. We actually caught up to the general trends that we experienced in the prior two fiscal year. And that's where we ended the year at about 80% allocated, which is pretty equivalent to how we've hit each of the last two fiscal years. And obviously that's attributed to dedication and commitment of Caltrans, CTC staff, our local partner agencies in getting projects to allocation to the commission. So we thought this was a bit of great news that we wanted to share with you on the progress. With that kind of gives us the end of the 1920. So we wanted to transition to the new fiscal year of 2020-2021. Next slide, please. In front of you here is our 2021 final allocation capacity proposal for the commission. As you may recall, in June, we presented the draft allocation capacities, which was based on the 2020 fund estimate that was adopted by the commission in August. It was based on pre-COVID-19 revenue levels at that point in time. As you may recall at the June meeting, we also provided a series of items that we feel are positive factors in continuing with recommending the allocation capacity levels at the pre-COVID-19 levels. So the number you have in front of you today for total across all programs is a little over $7 billion. That's a accumulation of both the draft allocation capacity that we previously presented, as well as that and the first slide, the about $1.4 billion that was unallocated from last year. So combined, the two is about the $7.1 billion. Based on the agenda as it looks now, just under $2 billion set for approval for the commission to allocate. So we're excited to get a jump start on allocating these remaining funds. In reviewing the total allocation capacity for each of the respective programs, there aren't any major changes or any major highlights. So we are excited for moving forward so we can continue with each program's projects. Next slide, please. This slide was first shared with you back in the June commission meetings. We wanted to share with you a latest update regarding gasoline consumption trends. This slide here goes back to July 2018. So we wanted to show how the general trends pre-COVID-19 from July 2018 through March, the average monthly gallons consumed was about 1.3 billion gallons. And then we start seeing the effects of the COVID-19, the shutdowns and the stay-at-home orders. March and April, sharp declines. We did see a slight uptick in May, again, a downturn in June, and another drastic increase in July. We are reviewing some of these trends to try to figure out what the premise is for them. In looking at the timelines, we know that the initial stay-at-home orders that took place throughout the state or initiated the initial downturn or the decrease in consumption. We know that the state started to reopen slowly, so that could account for the uptick, and then we started to shut down again. So we're monitoring those consumption levels quite closely, and then we'll continue to report the results to the commission at future meetings. Next slide, please. And then for this next, for our last slide, items, upcoming events that we're monitoring quite closely up to the next commission meeting in October. Here in August, as is in its name, Federal August redistribution. Latest update was that we heard that probably the end of August is when we'll hear the results. And as normal, state of California is there with our hands wide open, willing to accept as much as possible when it comes to the redistribution process. And as our friend from FHWA, Mr. Romano, had already mentioned, in September, the FAST Act is set to expire. So we're eagerly monitoring what progress may be made over the next 2 months. Next slide, please. And with that, that concludes the presentation. I'd like to thank my thanks to CTC staff for helping me through the slide. And before I turn it back over to Paul, I'd be willing to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Commissioners, are there any questions that you have of Keith's presentation? No? Are there any public comment? No? Okay, Paul.
Chair Norton, I just had a couple additional comments. So I just wanted to say that commission staff have compared the allocation capacity figures that Keith presented for 2020, 2021 with what we expect in terms of allocation requests for each program. And we found that generally there will be sufficient capacity to accommodate the expected allocation requests. However, for the STIP, it appears that the capacity will be very tight given the expected allocation requests and the possibility of advances for that program. So it'll be important to monitor the STIP capacity utilization that Caltrans reports on at each meeting. And additionally, we requested Caltrans to include in their report the trends on actual transportation revenues compared to what was assumed in the state budget, so that the commission will have the most up-to-date information in order to know if there's any changes to be expected. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. So with that, and since there are no other comments, we're going to move on to item 16. And that is the update on the commission equity efforts. Bridget?
Yes, thank you, Chair Norton. Yes. Commissioners, tab 16 is an action item to consider the composition of an equity advisory roundtable. I will begin my remarks with an update on the Commission's equity efforts. The Commission is committed to fostering transportation equity for all Californians. We have implemented internal training to support staff development in this area. In July, Commission staff participated in a series of trainings on diversity, equity, and inclusion. On August 19th, staff will begin participation in the Capital Collaborative on Race and Equity, as mentioned by Secretary Kim. CORE is a year-long immersive program led by the Strategic Growth Council that provides training and support on racial equity to participating state agency staff. In addition to these efforts, the Commission is proposing to convene a roundtable representing 15 to 20 equity experts and practitioners from throughout the state. Roundtable members would collaborate with Commission staff over a series of virtual meetings to develop recommendations to the Commission related to specific equity activities. The roundtable will provide a venue to enhance relationships and consider important questions, such as how to design effective and inclusive community listening sessions, and whether the Commission should form a standing equity advisory committee. The recommendations developed by the roundtable would be considered by the Commission at a future meeting. Staff are proposing to solidify roundtable membership in September and convene the first virtual meeting in October. Recommended membership areas for the roundtable have been developed in consultation with key stakeholders and are included in Attachment A of the book items. Now I will ask my colleagues to display the list of membership areas from Attachment A for those who have joined via the web. These membership areas serve to identify critical equity subject matter expertise that should be included on the roundtable. We recognize that many of these membership areas are quite broad and staff are open to inviting multiple representatives per membership area. Commission staff have met with several advocacy organizations to discuss this list, and we have received recommendations for additional membership areas to consider, including senior and elderly transportation needs, the LGBTQ community, and English as a second language or immigrant communities. Staff recommend that these perspectives be prioritized under the other membership area. If you are interested in participating in the Commission's equity efforts or would like to nominate an individual or organization for consideration on the Equity Advisory Roundtable, we would like to hear from you. Please send any recommendations to the Commission's email address, which is ctc@catc.ca.gov, and we would ask that you send those by August 19th, which is 1 week from today. Following any public comments, staff recommend the Commission approve the membership areas included in Attachment A for the Roundtable and direct staff to invite Roundtable participants. This concludes my remarks, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you very much. These are very, very helpful, and I thank you for putting up the information about how people get recommended. So we next have Commissioner Liu for some comments.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to take public comment before I comment on this item.
Okay, wonderful. We have public comment on this item. That's great. I'm looking forward to it. Our first public comment comes from
Nyla Pope-Hardin. You are now unmuted and free to speak.
Thank you, Nyla.
You're currently self-muted. Okay.
Perfect. I'm Nyla Pope-Hardin with Climate Plan. I first want to congratulate Commissioner Norton and Alvarado on chair and vice chairships, and welcome the new commissioners as well. Climate Plan and our partners submitted a letter to the CTC on this item, and we're really excited that the CTC is prioritizing equity and has been working in consultation with us to move some of this forward. I just want to take a few minutes to emphasize some of the points that were made in the June presentation on equity. We just want to emphasize that it's important for the CTC to develop some type of internal anti-racism framework. It's really reassuring to hear about the core cohort that's going to be happening, and also, oh gosh, the other stuff you guys have been doing internally to evaluate. And so really happy that you guys are moving in that direction. But in terms of the timeline, we want to make sure that while this is a priority, that it's moving at a pace that is comfortable for the community. I think communities have been waiting a long time for equity, and we need to be making sure that we're moving swiftly to implement it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your thoughtful letter, which we have received. Next.
Yes, next we have Patricia Chen. Patricia, you're unmuted and free to speak.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Norton and Commissioners. I'm Patricia Chen with LA Metro, and I wanted to congratulate you on the equity advancement efforts you are undertaking, and also to share some information about Metro's actions in this area and offer to collaborate. In 2018, the Metro Board approved the Metro Equity Platform, committing the agency to advancing equity. The agency firmly believes that access to opportunity should be a core objective of public investment and service, and transportation is an essential lever to enabling that success. Unfortunately, there exists vast disparities among neighborhoods and individuals in Los Angeles County, as I'm sure is the case in many other areas of the state, in terms of their ability to see and seize opportunity, be it jobs, housing, education, health, or safety. We have a 4-point equity platform, which provides a basis for Metro to actively lead and partner in addressing and overcoming those disparities. The first is defining and measuring equity to understand which communities are in need of more equitable access. Second, engaging the community meaningfully and actively. Third, ensuring a concentrated focus on equitable processes and outcomes. And finally, training and building capacity within Metro staff to advance equity. Metro's leadership is committed to using the equity platform for our programs and initiatives. And the most recent manifestation is the hiring of Keandra Kyler Dodds as our Executive Officer of Equity and Race to spearhead these important efforts. She sends her regrets for today and asks that you please contact her with any questions you may have regarding Metro's equity platform. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any other public comments? Yes.
Yes, up next we have Julia Jordan.
Hi, good afternoon. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you can.
Great. Yeah, Julia Jordan. I'm a policy coordinator with Leadership Council for Justice and Accountability. Thank you, Chair Norton and commissioners and CTC staff for the presentation. We, heard about and been closely involved in some of the efforts that both CTC and Caltrans are pursuing to address equity in the transportation sector. And I'm glad to hear about CalSTA's support of, even earlier, the renaming project and some of the other efforts going on. And, this is, of course, a really important endeavor, and it's clearly part of the broader response that we're seeing from agencies and organizations that are trying to build a stronger equity analysis, especially in the wake of recent uprisings against police violence and racism and white supremacy. And it's important that CTC is considering, the types of stakeholders that need to be part of this. And with that said, I just wanted to reiterate a couple points that I think several advocates have brought up in conversation with some CTC staff and commissioners, and sort of also just echo the points that were in the letters that Naila mentioned that we also signed on to. Namely that it's crucial that I think the roundtable discussions that are being proposed are really meaningfully and a generative time for those participating, and that there's really a deep commitment to actionable next steps that shift power and resources. And, I believe Commissioner Norton said earlier, sort of this democratization of CTC in the sense of making it more accessible, making the decisions that are being made around funding and programs a bit more accessible for the public, and particularly for those communities that Bridget sort of mentioned as being critical stakeholders to this process. And the second thing being making sure that there's a considerable amount of coordination between the transportation agencies. And my understanding is that, in having conversations both with some Caltrans and CTC staff, that they're aiming to, work together on this, and that is a goal. So I just wanted to reiterate the importance of that, and particularly from an advocate's perspective, where, we're definitely interested in trying to be part of this process, but want to maximize, our time as well, and making sure that they're really valuable and meaningful engagement on this front. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, we have additional public comment.
Yes, up next we have Julia Randolph.
Thank you, Julia.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good afternoon, Chair and Commissioners. Julia Randolph with the Coalition for Clean Air. First off, congrats to our new Chair and Vice Chair, and welcome to our new Commissioners. We were also part of the letter that was sent in that Naila and Julia just discussed, and I would like to echo their comments made thanking the staff on creating this roundtable and prioritizing equity and moving this forward, but also emphasize the comments made that at the previous CTC meeting that we need to move on this more swiftly to implement it with actionable next steps. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes public comment. Commissioner Liu?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that, we're very sensitive. I want to just thank staff for continuing to make this a priority, but say that, we're very sensitive about the issues that confront us with this, and we're trying to balance a couple of things, and that's potentially moving forward, to address transportation equity issues with the urgency that the matter deserves, while simultaneously being respectful of the need to engage and listen to and empower stakeholders, which can be a slow and tedious process. And while I can certainly appreciate the need to keep the stakeholders involved and see that effort being done by our staff, this issue has to be a priority. And if we're going to err, I think we're going to have to err on the side of doing too much and too soon and not being shy about moving forward. And I was really encouraged with our last meeting where Mr. Brown laid out an agenda that made a lot of sense and we seem to have a lot of agreement upon. And even what Patricia Chen from Metro shared today, which is very practical steps forward and how to address these issues. And I've read the statements from Secretary Kim and Director Omashakin and listened to what they had to say today. And I think we're all on the same page. So let's not lose any momentum here. And let's make sure that we can move forward quickly while being sensitive to making sure that everyone has an opportunity to be involved. I understand from my conversations with staff that there's a draft timeline on how to move forward in the immediate future. And I would hope that the department would work with staff to agree upon that timeline as quickly as possible. I would encourage and support staff to create this equity roundtable and convene it as soon as possible. October is soon, maybe not even soon enough, but as quickly as possible so that we can continue to take advantage of the momentum and the moment that we have here to really address just an absolutely fundamentally issue of such utter importance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to recognize Executive Director Mitch Weiss.
Thank you for those comments, Commissioner Liu. I just wanted to assure you, we do have a timeline that's similar to what Bridget was talking about. We have shared it with Caltrans Director Omashakin and I discussed it, and we are on the same page and both committed to moving forward as aggressively as we can.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much. And I just want to reiterate, Bridget, with you that we're going to receive nominations by August 19th. That's right. And then we're going to move forward with helping to appoint the roundtable by September and then convene in October. That's the timeline. Okay,
correct.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. I think that it shows that we're moving forward quickly. And yes,
I'm
other
prepared to make a
comments?
motion whenever you're ready.
Great. And with that, I'd like to ask for a motion, and that motion is made by Commissioner Kehoe and the second by
Lou.
Thank you. And Douglas, could you please take the roll?
Commissioner Alvarado.
Yes.
Commissioner Burke.
Aye.
Commissioner Davis.
Aye.
Commissioner Eager.
Aye.
Commissioner Gardena.
Aye.
Commissioner Inman.
Aye.
Commissioner Kehoe.
Aye.
Commissioner Liu.
Aye.
Commissioner Tavaloni. Chair Norton.
Aye.
Madam Chair, the motion is approved.
Thank you. Let's move on to item 17. Terry?
Thank you. Commissioners, item number 17 is an information item. Last November, the commission held a town hall in Crescent City and had the pleasure of touring several projects in Del Norte County. One project was the Last Chance Grade project located on US 101. This project is programmed as a long lead project in the 2020 shop with a projected delivery date of fiscal year 2030-31. Jamie Mattioli is the project manager from Caltrans assigned to this project, and he's here today to provide you with an update on this project.
Okay, quickly. Okay, Jamie, quickly, please.
Good afternoon, just got unmuted. Good afternoon, Jamie Mattioli, Caltrans, District 1, Project Manager. Thank you for the chance to provide the update on this project. Last Chance Grade is a project that sustains a safe and reliable lifeline for the people of rural Del Norte County and the surrounding region. Next slide, please. Well, within the next 10 minutes, I'll cover the context of the project, including the purpose and the need, what actions have been taken over the last 5 years, what steps are within the project schedule, and finally answer questions that you might have. Next slide, please. And the next slide. Getting into Chief Engineer Anderson mentioned the CTC Town Hall in November. This photo was during a site visit. Thank you, staff and commissioners, for your continued attention, engagement, and support of this project. Commissioners toured the site before we had the CTC Town Hall and later attended a public town hall just focused on the project. And we were asked to come back and provide this update that we're providing now. So we appreciate the opportunity. Some of you might recognize the back of your heads in this photo. Next slide, please. Here is an aerial image of the project area. Up is north and down is south. Please note the dashed lines. Those represent large, deep-seated, active landslides. The project area is 3 miles long. It runs through those landslides. It's surrounded by the Pacific Ocean on the west and an ocean of trees on the east. Those trees are part of Redwood National and State Park, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, home to sensitive species. The area is within the tribal heritage area of 5 tribal governments. The highway has been sinking and sliding westward ever since the alignment was put in place there in 1937. Next slide, please. So the slide just resulted in high maintenance and repair costs. This is just a small nested slide that's typical that needs to be cleaned up. Next slide, please. So the costs have been high. Caltrans has spent almost $100 million just maintaining the existing alignment since 1997, and the costs have been accelerating. So we have about 50 million, less than 50 million allocated just to take care of needs since 2015. Next slide. Here's a look at some current activities on the next slide, please, at Last Chance Grade. In this location, we're raising the road 18 feet to get it back to its desired elevation. So Caltrans really has 2 jobs at Last Chance Grade. Number 1 is to provide a safe and open highway to address the existing highway. And the second job is to find a long-term solution. So Last Chance Grade is a lifeline to the community of Del Norte and the region. This map shows the potential detour. If there was a full closure at Last Chance Grade, it would take 6 hours to get from Eureka to the south to Crescent City. But if you're a member of Yurok tribe living in Klamath and you send your children to school in Crescent City, that would be more like an 8-hour detour. The next slide, please. So because of the large detour, if there was a closure, it would be expensive for the region. A 2018 economic impact study conducted by EDR estimated these economic impacts for a full closure of 1 year. Next slide, please. So working towards a long-term solution, we have 3 major challenges for the project. Number 1 is just the environmental sensitivity and complexity because of the location, the sensitive resources, and the process. This requires a full environmental impact report, environmental impact statement. Number 2, we need to maintain partnerships with diverse groups, often with conflicting objectives. And number 3, we need to understand the geology. We know where the highway sits. There's active landslides. Also, where alternatives are proposed to the east, there are dormant landslides and some active landslides as well. Next slide, please. With those major risks come these 3 major challenges. The largest challenge to the impact of the schedule is environmental litigation. We have 2 projects in District 1 that are held up in court currently, and the scope of those projects is far less impacts than Last Chance Grade. there's also a risk that we can't agree with our many partners or what the mitigation strategies need to be, and that will hold up our permitting process. And finally, there's a chance we learn something during our preliminary geotechnical investigations we're working on, and we'd end up changing the alternatives, changing something. We'd have to go back and repeat steps, and it just takes more time. Next slide, please. And then one more. So what have we done in the last 5 years of the project? So we've had about a major milestone just about every year since 2015. We formed 4 working groups for the project, including Congressman Huffman's stakeholder group. We have the benefit of high level of engagement and support of the public, local governments, partner agencies, and elected officials. And we work hard to maintain those relationships. We've developed a feasibility study, a project study report in 2016. And then later we were able to eliminate, well, first in 2017, we received partial funding from CTC for beginning what was really the critical path for the project, understanding the geology, beginning those preliminary geotechnical investigations. In 2018, we eliminated 3 project alternatives that were high cost, high risk, high impact. And thank you, in 2019, CTC approved full funding for the environmental phase. So the full funding total is $50 million. That allowed us to procure a project-specific contract, and we've had the notice to proceed this year. Next slide, please. Since the notice to proceed, we've completed the 2nd phase of geotechnical investigations, and we have the final environmental document and permitting, the coastal development permit, for the 3rd and final phase of geotech investigations, preliminary investigations. And it's notable that we did not have any public opposition or controversy for the 3rd phase, which involves staging drill rigs within that old growth redwood forest in a state park. So that speaks to the successful engagement and the importance of that engagement. In working with our partners at HNTB, so far we've developed the approach, the steps and schedule to get through the environmental process. And importantly, what opportunities do we have to accelerate that process because of the urgency of the project while we continue our critical engagement activities. Next slide. And then next slide after that, I'll discuss the schedule that we're working on now. Right in front of us is this environmental analysis process in 2020. The objective is to screen the current 7 alternatives to get down to a smaller number, so we're saving costs and time during the environmental studies and thereafter. So we have an open process. We're engaging with our partners to screen those alternatives. We perform our full studies next year, engineering environmental studies, and that enables us to develop the draft environmental document in 2022, working towards a public hearing in 23 where we circulate that environmental document and select a preferred alternative. Now the next step, 24-25, is one of the key opportunities that we've identified to accelerate the schedule. So currently we've built in time to perform cultural resource studies after we select the preferred alternative. We've agreed with the 5 tribal governments that we will not perform those studies until we've selected the preferred alternative, because you could be digging up and impacting resources in areas that you don't actually end up building in that area, because we would have abandoned those alternatives. So we've made that agreement. However, there is a chance we will not need to conduct those studies, and we will know when we get done with our pedestrian ground surveys that are happening right now. So we should know by the end of the year whether we can shave off a year off the schedule. And in that case, we would be looking at a 2025 environmental document instead of this 2026 date. And that puts us into the design phase, work on getting permits and design, and beginning construction in 2031. Next slide, please. So in closing, again, thank you for your attention and support. I look forward to providing more updates in the future. It'll take all of us continuing to work together to find a safe, smart, and sustainable solution for last chance grade. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, I don't believe are there questions from the commission? I don't believe there's public comment. Okay, with that, we'd like to move on to item 18. Thank you for your presentation. Jamie, item 18, Terry.
Sure. Commissioners, item number 18 is an information item. Michael Beauchamp, Caltrans District 8 Director, is here to provide you with an update on a unique project in San Bernardino County, the Express West High-Speed Rail Project. This project proposes to construct a 170-mile-long electric high-speed passenger rail system that will run within the I-15's median. And I believe Michael's on the internet here.
Yeah, I'm on. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Terry. Good afternoon, commissioners, Chair Norton, CT staff, and others. Thanks for the opportunity to update the commission on the status of the Apple Valley, California to Las Vegas high-speed passenger rail project. I'll give a brief overview of the project, and then I've asked Julie Del Rivo, our Assistant Chief Counsel from our Los Angeles legal office, who was the lead for the Caltrans effort on developing the right-of-way lease agreement, to give an overview of the right-of-way lease agreement. Next slide, please. Okay, it is estimated that approximately 50 million people visit Las Vegas each year, and approximately 22 million are from Southern California. So this project provides another choice for the travelers when making that trip from Southern California to Las Vegas. As Terry mentioned, the route's planned 170 miles long, with 135 miles of the rail located within California. The train will be fully electric with a maximum speed of 180 miles per hour. It is estimated that the project will create approximately 10,000 jobs during construction and 500 jobs when it's fully operational. It is estimated that the project will significantly reduce VMT and lower our greenhouse gas emissions. The project is estimated to cost $4 billion and will be funded with $4.2 billion in private activity bonds and $600 million in private equity. Next slide, please. Okay, here's the design of the high-speed rail. Includes two typical sections. Approximately 75% of the line will be designed as a single track section as shown on the left. The other 25% of the rail line will be designed as a double track section to allow for the efficient operation of the passenger rail line. Both typical sections have barriers on both sides of the tracks, have catenaries installed along the track to supply electrical power to the trains. The first approximately 14 miles of the rail line will be side running, and the remainder of the alignment will be located within the freeway median. Next slide, please. The project includes 5 bridge replacements, 5 bridge modifications, 10 new emergency crossover structures, 2 viaducts, and other highway improvements. What you're looking at is the conceptual rendering of the Barstow Viaduct. The viaduct is approximately 3,800 feet long and spans over 2 local bridges, East Main Street and Riverside Drive, a Burlington Northern Santa Fe rail line, and the Mojave River. The plans for this viaduct are they're almost 60% complete. By the end of August, we're expecting the 60% plans. Next slide, please. Okay, the Federal Railroad Administration is a lead agency for the NEPA environmental process and is responsible for enforcing rail safety regulations. The Federal Highway Administration is a cooperating agency for the NEPA environmental process, and we need to get written concurrence for the right-of-way use agreement before Express West can occupy the lease area. The Bureau of Land Management and the Surface Transportation Board also are cooperating agencies for the NEPA environmental process. And Caltrans, we're providing quality management assurance during the design and construction phases, preparing and executing project-related agreements, are a signatory for the right-of-way use agreement, and will issue the encroachment permit to construct. Next slide, please. This is the high-level Express West schedule, which currently shows the NEPA process completing by the end of 2020, the completion and execution of the design and construction agreements, maintenance and operations agreement by the end of the year, and that they will be securing their funding by the end of this calendar year. Just wanted to mention that the design of the rail line is broken up into 4 delivery packages because it's 135 miles long. So the early package is going to include the long lead items like the Barstow Viaduct, and the 100% completion of the design package is expected in December. And then they have a south segment, which they're working on next, and that's from the train station in Apple Valley to approximately 40 miles near Barstow. And they want to complete this section, which would allow them to begin early testing. And the design package is expected to be completed in February of 21. And then they also have a north segment and a middle segment. The schedule shows that the contractor starting construction in 2021, and that Express West is planning to begin train service in 23-24. Now I'd like to turn it over to Julie Del Rivo to provide updates on the right-of-way use agreement. And Julie was very instrumental in developing the right-of-way use agreement. Julie, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Mike. Good afternoon, commissioners, Madam Chair, staff, and members of the public. The right-of-way use agreement is a significant action taken by Caltrans with the leadership of CalSTA to support the Express West high-speed rail project. The agreement will provide a choice to the public in how to travel to a popular destination, and it will do that all within an existing highway footprint. As we evaluated the right title and interest that Caltrans has in the I-15 in order to enter into this agreement, we observed that a good portion of I-15 was established in 1922, which is almost 99 years ago. And so we're looking forward to the next 99 years under this agreement of allocating a 30 to 60 foot wide portion of the highway to the shifting public use of high-speed rail. Next slide, please. The statutory authority for the lease agreement is found at Public Utility Code Section 7551.1. And this statute authorizes and gives the Secretary of Transportation the discretionary authority to grant the use of state highway rights-of-way for rail uses to private entities. Next slide, please. And so the statutory authority for the lease agreement was delegated in a written instrument from Secretary Kim to Caltrans Director Alma Shawkin, and Caltrans executed the lease agreement. This statute was passed with the express intent of allowing use of a compatible use of high-speed rail within state highways. This will be the first time since its adoption in 1982 that it will actually be used, and it is an historic opportunity for Southern California to gain the benefits of high-speed rail. Next slide, please. The key terms of the right-of-way use agreement are the lease term, which is a 50-year initial term and a 49-year renewal period for a total lease term of 99 years. There's an $842,000 annual fair market rent. This is not a fixed rent, but it does increase every 3 years pursuant to an urban consumer price index. Express West is to own all of the rail improvements that are installed within the lease area. The lease does provide also for Express West to construct the highway improvements that Mike Beauchamp mentioned, which are estimated at this point to be approximately $570 million of improvements. There are some preconditions to occupancy of the lease area and construction to begin. Those preconditions are completion of the NEPA reevaluation, and Express West will need to obtain revised RODs, or if those agencies require it, for after the NEPA reevaluation is complete. We will be working with FHWA on a concurrence letter issued to Caltrans for the right-of-way use agreement. Express West will have to have plans approved by Caltrans, and they will have to be issued an encroachment permit for the construction. BLM may need to issue a modified lease or some other consent for Express West for any federal land required for the project, although we don't anticipate that right now based on the projected alignment. It will all be within existing highway, an existing highway right-of-way footprint. The agreement indemnifies Caltrans, CalSTA, and the state of California based on proximate cause due to the authorized uses for rail and or the location and placement of the rail improvements within the highway. The lease is revocable. It would be revocable for a failure to timely start construction, which would be within 3 years of its effective date, and the effective date was June 19th, 2020. It would be revocable for a failure to timely complete construction of the project, which would be within 7 years of the effective date. And during the lease period, if there's a failure to operate as a high-speed passenger rail for 18 months, that would be a terminating event of default and grounds for revocation of the lease. Next slide, please. All right, I want to pause a moment to just give you an overview of how did we determine fair market rent for a piece of property 30 feet wide and 135 miles long. And the way that was done is through a fair market value appraisal. The method used is an across the fence sales comparison valuation method. And this method is applied by comparing land values on either side of the proposed alignment, and from those values, determining a value of the longitudinal corridor. So you're looking across the fence to the land around and determining the value. It is widely accepted for corridor valuations and is endorsed by the Appraisal Institute. The method is often mandated by public and private agencies such as Southern California Edison, Union Pacific Railroad Company, the Metropolitan Transportation Agency, California High-Speed Rail Authority, and even Caltrans in terms of valuing corridors. So what is considered across the fence in a 135-mile alignment? What happened was that the alignment was broken out into value nodes and segments. Those segments were determined and established based on relevant sales or market indicators. So the market influenced how the nodes and the segments were segregated so that there was some logical unit price patterns established within those segments. There are 10 in total within the alignment. A corridor enhancement factor of 1.5% was applied to the across the fence valuation in order to account for the value inherent in the work necessary to compile such a corridor. This is a typical and accepted method. Then the high-speed train usage was given an occupancy factor. That occupancy factor is a determination of how much the train usage will account for or occupy out of the total fee or a tantamount to fee where Caltrans has a highway easement maximum occupancy within the leased area. So it's never going to be more than 100%. And generally, an occupancy factor of 50% is given to the surface area, 30% is given to the subsurface area, and an aerial occupancy factor of 20% gives you the total of 100%. In this case, the high-speed train was given a usage factor of 75%. So there was a significant impact to the surface area, there's a moderate impairment to the subsurface, and a nominal impairment to the aerial. Caltrans, and again, this is a compatible use, so within the lease area, Caltrans still retains the ability to manage our connection to the local network. And so we have at least 40 existing overcrossings that will be crossing over the lease area. There are 270 subsurface drainage systems that will still cross underneath. And so we will be compatibly occupying significant portions of the lease area, and we have the rights to continue to do so in the future, not just for what's existing, but if the need arises for additional overcrossings to serve the local transportation network. Thus, we were happy with a 75% occupancy factor. The fair market value was also determined as of a data value of January 20th, 2020, which was a pre-pandemic data value, and it was a very healthy real estate market and a good economic situation. So that is how the annual rent was determined. If you go to the next slide, please. This will just give you a sense of the breakdown of the area in terms of square feet and acres within each value node. So you'll have a proportional sense of scale for each node as compared to the total lease area, which is 727.8 acres. Next slide, please. This table presents the unit value per acre of the different value nodes and segments. In the case of this particular project, most of the 135-mile alignment, at least 106 miles, is in the open desert, where consequently, as you can see here, the land values are understandably lower. Next slide, please. So the total lease area, the 30 feet by 135 miles, was valued at $10,530,000, and the fair market rent was derived by applying a reconciled 8% ground rate of return to that, and that is how we arrived at the annual rent of $842,000. Next slide, please. With the leadership of CalSTA, we relied on Public Utility Code Section 7551.1 to enter into the lease agreement. There are other statutes that provide for rail uses and leases of highways. Those statutes are anticipated to have contracting partner, which is a public entity. And in this case, with Express West, we're dealing with a private entity as our contracting partner. So that is why we went with the Public Utility Code Section 7551.1. Next slide, please.
So I think, you know what, I hate to interrupt you. What I'd like to do is maybe suggest to Chair Norton that if there's any questions from commissioners, that we take those now, and then we can, the rest of your presentation is included in handouts to the commissioners, and so they can read through that and send me any questions that they may have after the presentation.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Yeah.
Commissioners, are there any commissioners who have any questions about this item? Are there any public comment items? No, we really appreciate this as an information item, and we want to thank you for adding the additional information for us when needed. So thank you. And let us take a small bio break. It is 3:53. Let's come back at 4, but we just need a chance to get up, stretch, and, you know. So we'll get back to you at 4 o'clock.